What's up everyone, Thomas here, aka Restrooms Trainer, and welcome back to another one of my videos. So I'm sure most of us have played a Mario Kart game at some point in our lives, and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is arguably the best in the series, with its large roster of characters, vehicle customization, amazing music, and most importantly, a great selection of tracks to race on. And with Mariokart World right around the corner, now seems like a good time to rank all 96 tracks in Mariokart 8 Deluxe. But it was because you guys voted for this. Now, unlike my Monster Hunter Rise rankings, I'm not going to split this into two videos, and I'm not going to skip a bunch in the middle just for the sake of saving time. Regardless of how much I have to say about a track, whether it's a whole paragraph or two, or just a quick sentence, I will say something about every track here. So this is likely going to be my longest video yet. Now real quick, let me lay a few things out. Firstly, you'll see in the footage that I use a different character and kart combination for every track. That was just me having a bit of fun and doing something different while recording all the footage. When actually ranking these tracks, I used the same character and kart combination for every track, which is Lemmy with the circuit special, off-road wheels and the parafoil. Not the most optimised combination, but Lemmy is my favourite Mario character, and I just like this combination. Secondly, you'll probably notice that in the footage for a couple tracks, I'm playing with the mushrooms only option. That's solely just so I can get some footage on some of the shortcuts. When doing this ranking, I use the same settings I always do. 150cc, no items. Thirdly, it's probably worth pointing out that I'm Australian, and the reason that's important is because there's a small handful of tracks that actually have different names depending on where you are in the world. For example, what's the name of this track? If you're from the US, you probably said Music Park, but if you're from Europe or Australia, you'd have said Melody Motorway. Whenever a track like this pops up, I will bring up the name difference, but obviously I'll primarily use the names used here in Australia. Fourthly, just a reminder that this video is entirely my opinion and you're completely free to disagree with it. Regardless of what I say here, I don't think any of these courses are bad, I just think some are better than others. And lastly, don't forget to like and subscribe, it really helps this channel out as I'm hoping to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Now with 96 tracks to go through, let's get started with number 96, Sky High Sunday. Out of all the tracks in this game, Sky High Sunday is what I would personally call the worst of the bunch. While the overall theme of the track is quite nice, the track itself can best be described as okay. At its core, it's just a simple loop. We already have two other tracks like that, and both are more fun to race on. I think what hurts this track the most is actually the anti-gravity. It feels really unnecessary, and makes the track feel very floaty, for lack of a better word. If the anti-gravity was removed, I'm sure I'd enjoy the track a lot more, and it's partially for that reason that I'm looking forward to its return in World. Number 95. Dolphin Shoals. So this might be a shock to a lot of you, but let me explain. It will become pretty evident throughout this video that there are some types of tracks that I prefer over others, and water themed tracks are unfortunately towards the bottom. There are some exceptions, but Dolphin Shoals is not one of them. While I think the concept is cool, it's just not for me. Number 94. Cheap Cheap Beach. Yet another water themed course, though this one at least has far less underwater sections, mostly because they're all optional. While I do like the tropical feel of this track, as it's something we don't have much of in this game, it doesn't really have much else. It's a good track, just kinda forgettable. Number 93. Water Park. That's right, another water track, though the water is less of a problem in this one. I like that this one has a theme park setting, and the big loop is perfect for getting those purple drifts. But other than that, there isn't really much else. This is only an early game track. Number 92. Twisted Mansion. Finally a track that isn't water themed. Unfortunately, ghost themed tracks aren't really my thing either. Now don't get me wrong, I think this is a cool track. It makes great use of the anti-gravity. But I just don't care much about ghost tracks, and the underwater section here felt really unnecessary. Once again, good track, just not my thing. Number 91. Dry Desert. Desert themed tracks are yet another type of track that I'm not too keen on, though there are definitely exceptions this time, but Dry Desert is definitely not one of them. While other desert tracks have things like giant bones and sand ships, or racing through an ancient tomb, this track doesn't really have much. Sure, there's some pillars, a giant sand pit and an oasis, but it still feels kind of empty. But I suppose it could have been worse. Number 90. Rosalina's Ice World. As you can probably guess, snow and ice theme levels aren't really my thing either. Though to be fair, I don't think anyone likes ice physics, and this track is absolutely full of it. Not to mention the underwater section halfway through the track as well. Though I do like the alternate path you can take full of booster panels, so it has something at least. Number 89. Sherbet Land. Yet another ice level, though this one is more snow than ice, and thus less ice physics to deal with. And while there are a couple underwater sections, they're all optional, preventing it from placing any lower. Number 88. Peach Gardens. Peach Gardens is a track I'm quite familiar with, since it was in Mariokart World, and I played that game addictively when I was a kid, so expect some bias later on. Though Peach Gardens was definitely one of the more forgettable tracks. But still, it was cool to see it added to the booster course pass. Until you reach lap 3, when it's suddenly revealed that this is based on the tour version of the track, which felt really unnecessary to me, and I'm personally not a fan of it. If you're going to remake a track, base it on the original, and not tour. Number 87. Sunset Wilds. So fun fact, Mario Kart Super Circuit was actually the very first game I remember playing as a little kid, and although I was awful at it, with the exception of one track for some reason, I still enjoyed it. And when a different Super Circuit track got revealed, I actually whipped out the old Super Circuit cartridge, put it in my DS, and played for a bit. And I definitely remember how cool Sunset Wilds was. So when I played this version, I was underwhelmed. While the track itself isn't too bad, it was very clear they once again copy and pasted from Tour, and they didn't even bother including the most important part of the track. You know, the sunset. For those who aren't familiar with the original, every lap, the sunset would progress, and the sky would get darker. It was a really cool feature, and made Sunset Wilds stand out, and yet they didn't include it in this game. Such a shame. Number 86. Tick-Tock Clock. The Tick-Tock Clock is an interesting track. It uses its clock theming quite well, with stuff like pendulums, gears, and clock faces with moving hands that you can actually trick off of. Despite all that, this isn't really my kind of thing. It's a good track, but I'd prefer to race on something else. Number 85. Cloudtop Cruise. So I certainly wasn't expecting Cloudtop Cruise to be this low down. It's not a bad track, I simply just prefer 84 other tracks over it. Though that's not to say it's without its problems. Some of the turns can be tricky on faster speeds, and while the thunderstorm section is cool, I do sometimes wish it was a bit easier to tell which boost panels are about to be shot. Number 84. Amsterdam Drift. Time for our first city track from Tour, and unfortunately, I consider Amsterdam Drift to be the worst of the bunch. Which is a shame, because I think Amsterdam, both the track and city, looks lovely. Yet this track has a lot more water than I would like. Kinda funny for a country that's actively reclaiming land from the sea, though I do suppose that canals are a big part of the city as well. Regardless, while I do like this track, it's definitely not my first choice for a city track. Number 83. Snowland. Definitely one of the more forgettable tracks from Super Circuit. And of course, there's ice physics as well, though it doesn't really bother me that much. Though the track itself is quite short, making it forgettable in this game as well. Number 82. Sweet Sweet Canyon. When I look at Sweet Sweet Canyon, I'm reminded of two things. One is Sugar Rush from Wreck-It Ralph, and the other is Sweet Mountain from Sonic Colors. And I'd just like to point out that both of them came out before this track. I'm not accusing them of anything, I'm just pointing it out. Regardless, the track itself is kinda cool. I like the long spiral around the Cake Mountain, and the shortcut through the donut near the end is cool as well. And while the theming of the track is pretty cool, I personally feel like that's all it has going for it. Once again, not a bad track, I just think other courses are better. Number 81. Donut Plains 3. Donut Plains 3 at its core is a very short, sweet and simple track. And while I do like simple circuit courses, Donut Plains 3 doesn't quite scratch that itch for me. And also, they added this random brief underwater sections for no apparent reason other than why not. Not a bad track, but nothing special either. Number 80. Cheeseland. Another iconic track from Super Circuit. While the track looks visually nice, the anti-gravity feels a little unnecessary, and the small craters all over the course can be fairly annoying at times, since they can mess up a drift, though they are fun to trick off of. So overall, it's an okay track. Number 79. Excite Bike Arena. So the Excite Bike Arena is quite interesting. While it's just a simple loop at its core, what's great about this track is that the location of all the ramps and mounds are randomised every time you race on it. It's also quite fun doing several tricks in a row off the ramps. Though ultimately, the track doesn't offer much else. Number 78. Calamari Desert. I imagine a few people are annoyed that Calamari Desert is this slowed down, and fair enough. This version of Calamari Desert is another case of copy and pasting from Tour rather than the original. Now while it does come with the upside of being able to drive through the train tunnel, that's about it. It doesn't feel quite the same as previous versions. Number 77. Riverside Park. Riverside Park certainly wasn't a track I was expecting to get added to the Booster Course Pass, but I'm glad it did. Jungle tracks aren't something we have that many of in this game, and I definitely prefer this version over the original, and I really like the final jump through the waterfall at the end. But the problem with this track is that it feels too short. But that's about it really. Number 76. Athens Dash. Time for another city track, and Athens Dash is the next one up. Now the thing about Athens Dash is that it really focuses on ancient Greece and the ruins related to it. Now yes, real life Athens is absolutely full of these ruins, but I would have really liked to see more of the actual city of Athens. There's also some parts of the track, especially on lap 3, where it feels more like a mountain themed track than an Athens themed track. It also kind of bugs me at times that they force you to drive through these somewhat narrow doorways. But other than that, I do still think it's a good track. Number 75. DK Mountain. So DK Mountain is another track that I'm familiar with thanks to Mariokart Wii. Though even in that game, it was one of the more forgettable tracks for me. While I do like the idea of driving down a mountain, as you'll see much later, and the cannon is cool, there isn't really much else to it. These sharp turns can be tricky at times, especially on higher speeds. I suppose the bridge you could trick off at the end is pretty cool as well, though I'm not very good at it. Still an alright course though. Number 74. Bowser's Castle 3. I'm kind of surprised we only have 2 Bowser's Castles in this game, and this is definitely the inferior of the 2. Because it's a track from Super Mario Kart, it ultimately doesn't have anything special to make it stand out. While it's cool that you're able to drive on top of the walls here, they're very thin, and it's quite tricky even getting on there, let alone staying on there. But other than that, it's an alright track. Number 73. Mario Circuit. Time for the first Mario Circuit, and 8's version is my least favourite. I think the whole idea of the track basically being a Mobius strip shaped like an 8 is pretty cool, and it's a great way to show the anti-gravity feature, but the track itself doesn't really have much other than that. It's still a good course though. Number 72. Baby Park. Baby Park is known for 2 things: being by far the shortest track in the series, and having 7 laps instead of 3, unless you're playing DS where it has 5 instead. What this leads to is a very chaotic mess if you're playing with items. Though if you're playing without items like I do, then it's still fun, as it's quite easy to overtake the characters and last. And odds are, it'll still be a close race. But at its core, it's just a short simple loop. Number 71. SNES Rainbow Road. So we got 5 Rainbow Roads in this game, and it shouldn't come as a shock to anyone that the original SNES version is the worst of the lot, especially given how great the rest are. This track is somewhat short and fairly simple. The swamps do add something to the track at least, and it looks really nice visually, though I do wish they brought back GBA Rainbow Road instead of this for the 4th time. Number 70. Bone Dry Dunes. Time for another desert track, and Bone Dry Dunes is definitely a step up from the previous ones in my opinion. I really like the inclusion of the sand ships off to the side that throw coins onto the track. It really reminds you of Montana in a way. I also like how you drive along the side of these bones here, though it can be a bit of a pain trying to reach the upper section while gliding, though it isn't that big of a deal. So a pretty good track I would say. Number 69. DK Jungle. DK Jungle is one of the few jungle tracks we have in this game, and it's pretty good in my opinion. I think the gliding sections are pretty cool, and the temple with the giant banana is quite fitting as well. Not really much else to say, so yeah, good track. Number 68. Wario Stadium. Wario Stadium is a pretty cool track, being themed around a dirt bike arena, and it's certainly fun doing back-to-back tricks around the track, though some of the turns can be tricky on high speeds, and while the track is cool, it doesn't really stand out to me. Number 67. Boo Lake. So I'm kind of surprised this isn't lower, since this is both a ghost themed track and a water themed track. But honestly, I kind of like Boo Lake. The water doesn't really diminish the track in any way, since it doesn't really have any of the floatiness that made tracks like Dolphin Shoals less fun. And besides that, it's just a short and simple track. Not much more to it. Number 66. Piranha Plant Cove. Out of all the tracks in this game, Piranha Plant Cove is probably the one I'm least familiar with. And I think that might actually be why it's not any lower despite being a water track. I am still learning the track, and so everything still feels somewhat fresh to me. Now yes, the fact that the course is 90% underwater does bother me a bit, but not as much as other tracks surprisingly. Number 65. Los Angeles Laps. Time for another city track, and LA is up next. LA is probably known best for two things: sunny beaches and Hollywood. And at least one of those things was present. Now I genuinely enjoy city/urban themed tracks, and LA Laps does scratch that itch a bit, but only slightly. While there are cool parts like gliding over this baseball stadium, there isn't really much to make LA Laps stand out amongst the other city tracks. Now that could just be me not being too familiar with LA, but this isn't my first choice for a city track to race on. Number 64. Big Blue. Of the two F-Zero tracks, Big Blue is definitely the less enjoyable of the two, though it is still quite fun. This is one of those courses where instead of the usual closed circuit, this is the point A to point B that's divided into 3 sections to represent the laps. And the track does a good job at making you feel fast at times, though not as well as the other F-Zero track. Number 63. Ice Ice Outpost. Time for another ice themed track, and this one doesn't have ice physics. Ice Ice Outpost does a good job at making itself feel unique from the other ice themed tracks. While most ice and snow themed tracks usually take place on a mountain or in a tundra, Ice Ice Outpost takes place at what I believe is an Arctic research station, or something similar at least. And this track also has a few shortcuts, though they can be tricky to pull off, especially at higher speeds, though that doesn't really change much. Number 62. Rainbow Road. So Mario Kart 8's version of Rainbow Road definitely makes an effort to stand out amongst the rest, being themed around orbital satellites and space stations, rather than just a magical road in the sky like the rest tend to be. Though I think that actually makes it less fun than most of the others. While it's still a fun track, it just doesn't really hold a candle to the remaining 3 in this game. Number 61. Grumble Volcano. An absolute classic from Mario Kart Wii that I have a lot of fond memories playing as a kid, and I think they recreated it pretty damn well. And while this is a great track, this is simply just a case of other tracks being better in my opinion, nothing else to it. Number 60. Choco Mountain. This is pretty much identical to Grumble Volcano, in that the track is good, it's just that I like other tracks better, and I just happen to enjoy Choco Mountain just a bit more than Grumble Volcano, only very slightly though. Number 59. Mushroom Gorge. Mushroom Gorge is one of the most iconic tracks of Mario Kart Wii, and so I, and I'm sure many others, were excited to see it included in the Booster Course Pass. And it's still just as fun as back then. But just like back then, it can be a little awkward trying to steer while bouncing on the mushrooms, and it does feel like it kills the speed a little bit. But other than that, it's still fun. Number 58. Paris Promenade. Time for the next city track, being Paris Promenade. Now I feel like this track embodies Paris quite well, from the layout, to the landmarks, to the music. And it is a pretty nice track, though I'm personally not a fan of going backwards on lap 3. Yes, I know that all city tracks on tour do this, but with those tracks, it's showing off alternate paths and different versions of the track. It's not really doing that here, it's just going backwards. But that's really the only problem with this track in my opinion. Number 57. Alpine Pass. Alpine Pass, also known as Rock Mountain in the US, is a pretty nice track that manages to stand out from other mountain themed tracks, with cliffs, caves, and a forest that manages to not feel out of place. Though I do think the gliding section was a bit drawn out. Still a great track though. Number 56. Piranha Plant Pipeway. Piranha Plant Pipeway, also known as Piranha Plant Slide, is a track that I'm surprised I liked as much as I did. The flowing water helps give a sense of speed, and the underwater section isn't too bothersome either. And while the Piranha Plant here can be a slight pain if you're not careful, that's kind of the point. So overall, definitely enjoyable. Number 55. Moo Moo Meadows. Without question one of Mario Kart Wii's most iconic tracks. And yet, unfortunately one of its most basic and simple. Now obviously that's by design. This is an early track after all. While the inclusion of the glide ramp was cool, it's ultimately unnecessary. And the reason most people, including myself, enjoy this track is pure nostalgia. Still fun though. Number 54. Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing is a pretty cool track with a really cool gimmick. That being the seasons. Whenever you select the track, it'll randomly pick one of 4 seasons, and change the track to suit that season. While the layout of the course doesn't change, there are still small differences that make each season feel unique beyond just the visual sense. And it's cool seeing a bunch of villagers from the series on the side watching the race. Always fun to race here, except for winter. Number 53. DK Snowboard Cross. DK Snowboard Cross, also known as DK Summit, is definitely a track I enjoy primarily for nostalgia. Though the most fun part about this track is obviously doing tricks off the ramps and halfpipes. And it honestly feels a lot better in this game than it did in Wii. Although the section with like 50 bumps does still kind of annoy me, since I suck at tricking off of them properly. But aside from that, this is still a really fun track that lives up to the original. Number 52. Thwomp Ruins. I found the ruins setting of Thwomp Ruins quite interesting, and there's not something we see often in tracks. I also really like the music in this track. It really matches the vibe of an ancient mystical temple in the mountains. It's also really cool being able to drive on the wall here. And I like it in the section with multiple paths. Another path opens up on lap 2. And I'm sure everyone's tried to take this shortcut before. So overall, a really fun track. Number 51. Shy Guy Falls. Shy Guy Falls has always been a track I enjoyed. Now while the track itself is cool, with driving up and down a waterfall and all, my favourite part about this track is actually its music. While it might not be the best music in the game, or even my taste, it's still a track I enjoy listening to, and it's even cheered me up on occasion when I've been feeling down, so Shy Guy Falls will always be a bit special to me. While the track itself is still fun, the music is what really does it for me personally. Number 50. Bangkok Rush. Bangkok Rush is an interesting track that manages to blend both the urban and cultural sides of the city seamlessly. Now I admittedly know almost nothing about Bangkok, but I think this track looks really cool. I like the street with the neon lights, and the glide over this landmark was pretty cool. And although it may seem minor, the spirals at a parking lot was something I liked a fair bit, since it reminded me of an old racing game I enjoyed called Power Slide, and my favourite track in that game had something very similar. All this to say that this is a pretty cool track. Number 49. Wild Woods. Wild Woods is a pretty cool track, taking place within a giant hollowed out tree, which is definitely a cool idea. I also like how you start the race on the side of the tree rather than on flat ground. And the water slide towards the end is fun as well. So definitely a good track. Number 48. Squeaky Clean Sprint. The idea of a course taking place in a giant bathroom isn't something most people expected, but it works really well. Now there is a lot of water here, but aside from the initial dip in the bath, it's not that bothersome. I really like the multiple paths you can take around the start, add some variety to each lap. So overall, quite a cool track. Number 47. Waluigi Stadium. Similar to Wario Stadium from earlier, Waluigi Stadium is based off a dirt bike arena, and this is definitely the better of the two. It feels less over the top, and obviously this track appeared in Mario Kart Wii, so there's definitely a little bit of bias there as well. Still a great track though. Number 46. Merry Mountain. It's cool seeing a Christmas themed track, not something I expected. So this is the course on tour, so I suppose it makes sense. I really like the look of the town you start in, and I like the alternate path along the rails, and the glide down the mountain is cool too, so definitely a fun track to race on. Number 45. Bowser's Castle. Every Mario Kart game has a version of Bowser's Castle, and Mario Kart 8's version did not disappoint. While some versions tried to go for a more eerie feel, this version went for the over-the-top fire and magma route. There's a few obstacles to make things interesting, and of course there's the giant fire Bowser that punches the track, causing it to shake, allowing you to trick off of it. Definitely one of my favourite versions of Bowser's Castle. Doesn't quite beat the Wii version though. Number 44. Mute City. Time for the other F-Zero track. And if Mute City is good at one thing, it's giving you a good sense of speed, especially on 200cc. Though it doesn't maintain that for the whole track, which is my only real complaint. But other than that, it's a fun course to race on. Number 43. DS Mario Circuit. I mentioned earlier that I really like the more simple circuit courses, and the DS version of Mario Circuit is no exception. I like the brief section in the forest that teases the Wiggler on lap 3, though the fire spitting piranhas are a little annoying at times. Still quite fun though. Number 42. Coconut Mall. Without question one of the most popular courses for Mario Kart Wii, and certainly one of my favourites as well. So naturally, like everyone else, I was excited. And when it came out, well, it was awesome, but not gonna lie, I kinda prefer the original. I can't quite put my finger on why, but there was just a certain charm to the original that didn't quite carry over to this version. Still an awesome track though. Number 41. GBA Mario Circuit. Another track that's just a simple circuit. Well, aside from the hairpin which is raised for no reason other than adding an anti-gravity section to the track, which is kinda cool admittedly. And I like how you can go into the pit stop for a little boost panel as well, something that was in the original as well, by the way. So yeah, it's a fun track. Number 40. Melody Motorway. Melody Motorway, also known as Music Park, has a fun music theme to it if the name wasn't obvious. And this includes things like driving on pianos and xylophones that actually make sounds when you drive over them, as well as drums you can bounce off of. And I like how the piranha plants actually bob their heads to the music as well. Some of the turns can be a bit tricky if you're trying to do tricks, but other than that, it's still a fun track. Number 39. 3DS Rainbow Road. time for another Rainbow Road, and the 3DS version is up next. Instead of the usual 3-lap circuit most other tracks have, this course is one big loop divided into 3 segments, and each segment feels unique. From drifting around on the planet's rings, to driving around on the moon, to the glide through all those rings near the end. It definitely helps it stand out from other Rainbow Roads, though it only takes bronze in this game. Number 38. Tokyo Blur. Time for another city track. This time it's Tokyo Blur. Now being Tokyo, naturally this is a fairly urban track, though they did add in some of the cultural stuff as well. My only real complaint is that the track as a whole felt a little short. I'd love to see more of Tokyo. I'd actually really love to go there in person one day. But for now, this is the best I can do. Number 37. Mario Circuit 3. I'm sure some of you are surprised to see Mario Circuit 3 this high. It's just a simple circuit with no real gimmicks. But that's kind of the point. I've already mentioned that I like simple circuits, and I don't think any track in this game is more simple than this. Number 36. Yoshi's Island. Now I've only played one game in the Yoshi's Island series, being Yoshi's New Island on 3DS. But from what I recall from that game, this track translates the series very well, having a few of the enemies from those games, and driving through each major area that tends to appear. And I like how hitting this cloud unlocks an alternate path that lets you drive through an end goal from those games. Definitely a cool track. Number 35. Rome Avanti. The next city track is Rome Avanti, and for those like me wondering what the hell Avanti means, it's Italian, and it means something to the effect of forward, onward, or ahead. So I suppose it's quite fitting then. But as for the track itself, I think it's quite good, and it definitely feels like Rome. And obviously, it includes some of its signature landmarks, most obviously being the Colosseum, which you go through not once, but twice. Though aside from that, there were times where the track layout confused me a little, though that could just be me still getting used to the track. And although very minor, part of me would have preferred had this track taken place during the day rather than night. But that isn't really much of a problem. Still a really nice track. Number 34. Mario Kart Stadium. The first course in the entire game, and a really solid one at that. It does a decent job at showing off the anti-gravity without going overboard. And aside from that, it's effectively a simple circuit track, which I obviously enjoy. And the whole stadium theme adds to it, making me enjoy it even more. So definitely a great course to start this game with. Number 33. Hyrule Circuit. So I'm a big Zelda fan. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are literally my 2 favourite games of all time. So naturally, I'm going to enjoy a Zelda themed course, even if it doesn't take after any one game specifically. Hyrule Warriors feels the closest to me. I really like how they changed several things to be Zelda themed. Coins become rupees, swoops become keys, and piranha plants become Deku Barbers. And of course, there's the Master Sword puzzle, where if you manage to hit all 3 of these spinners in a row, you unlock a boost ramp over the Master Sword, which is really cool since Zelda is absolutely full of puzzles. So definitely an amazing course. Number 32. New York Minute. Another city track, and if my memory serves me right, this was actually the first city track in Tour, and I'd say New York is a pretty good pick. Now I've mentioned that I like tracks that have a modern urban city feel to them, and New York Minute definitely scratches that itch. They even included Central Park. Not much else to say here, so yeah, good track. Number 31. Cooper Cape. Another iconic course on Mario Kart Wii, and one I'm sure a lot of people were happy to see return. But just like Coconut Mall earlier, this is a track where I actually prefer the original, and that's mostly because of the tunnel. In the original, it was actually a tunnel that had a water flow to increase speed, but in this game, they took the top off and effectively made it an underwater half-pipe, which I personally don't like as much. Though regardless, this is still a great course. Number 30. Toad Circuit. Yep, it's another basic circuit track. Need I really explain more? I like simple circuit tracks. Enough said. Number 29. Sky Garden. Right, I have a fair bit to say about here. Now while I do really like Sky Garden, this just isn't Sky Garden. It's a tour-based simplification of Sky Garden. This is Sky Garden. I can absolutely see why they'd want to simplify it a bit, but this feels way too extreme. So one thing I absolutely love about this stage regardless is the music. Both this and the original. Just listen. Now, I hinted at this all the way back at Sunset Wilds, but fun fact, when Sky Garden got revealed, I actually got out my old copy of Super Circuit and played a fair bit of the original Sky Garden. I remember getting a pretty decent time too, and I just made me wish they actually remade the original Sky Garden instead of just copy and pasting this bastardization from Tour. This isn't the only Super Circuit track to fall victim to this, but this feels like the most obvious. Regardless, even this version is still fun to race on. Number 28. Electrodrome. Electrodrome was a pretty cool track, having a sort of disco theme to it. This track is probably one of the best uses of the anti-gravity feature in the game, and the music is obviously pretty good as well. Definitely a fan favourite for a reason. Number 27. Sydney Sprint. Now, with every other city track, I've mostly been going off my limited knowledge when talking about it. But I've actually been to Sydney, several times in fact, and so I can say personally that it's honestly a pretty accurate representation. The brick paths along the water, the inclusion of a ferry, which is a pretty common transportation method around the harbour, and several landmarks that are quite accurately placed as well. Obviously you have the Sydney Opera House, Sydney Harbour Bridge, Luna Park on the other side. They even included the Centrepoint Tower in the background. Yes, I know it's called the Sydney Eye nowadays, but I still call it the Centrepoint Tower, okay? It feels like the only thing they missed is Bondi Beach, which, to be fair, is a fair bit further away than everything else here. Still, really cool track. I do wish a bit that we actually went into the city centre a bit more, but it doesn't really matter, and I enjoyed this track regardless. Number 26. Maple Treeway. Another really iconic course on Mario Kart Wii, and it's still just as fun. Although I do admittedly kind of miss the big net that was here instead of a gliding section. But other than that, it's still a great track. Number 25. Super Bell Subway. A track based on a subway system is honestly something I'm surprised we didn't have sooner, and I think it's a pretty cool track. I like the multiple side paths you can take in the tunnel, and the trains themselves make for an interesting obstacle. So yeah, pretty cool track. Number 24. Madrid Drive. Time for another city track, and Madrid Drive is honestly more fun than I was initially expecting. Obviously, it's a city themed track, so I'm going to like it regardless. I also like how you have to drive through a giant soccer stadium while avoiding giant soccer balls. That's right, Soccer. Not football, soccer. That's what we call it here in Australia. We have our own football. But back on track. Madrid drivers all ran just a fun track. Simple as that. Number 23. Shroom Ridge. So despite not being a circuit track, Shroom Ridge does still give me that circuit vibe. And I like the idea of a track just being on a highway next to a cliff. Some of the turns near the end can be tricky on higher speeds, especially with all the traffic, but it isn't too bad. I definitely enjoy it. Number 22. Daisy Cruiser. Considering that this track is on a cruise ship, it's obviously going to be pretty good, and Daisy Cruiser does not disappoint. Although it can be annoying, I do like how the tables slide across the room as the ship sways, which, as someone who's been on a couple cruise ships, is partially accurate. I mean, obviously stuff isn't flying across the room, but the swaying is absolutely something you will notice, and it can be quite strong at times. Regardless, the alternate path is cool, even if it's filled with water. Definitely a great track. Number 21. Toad's Turnpike. Toad's Turnpike is a track that I feel people either love or hate, and that's mostly because of the dense traffic, so I don't mind it all that much. And this track is obviously somewhat city themed as well. I really like that they added these wall ride sections as well, makes things a bit more interesting. And cars with the glider ramps on the back are pretty cool too. So yeah, a pretty good track all things considered. Number 20. Dragon Driftway. I really like the theming of this track, and with a name like Dragon Driftway, naturally there's going to be a lot of drifting, which I really like. I also think this track makes great use of the anti-gravity feature as well, with the track running along the length of the dragon, which is really cool. So yeah, great track. Number 19. Daisy Circuit. So I'm sure a lot of you are surprised to see Daisy Circuit this high. And believe me, I was too. Out of all the tracks in Mario Kart Wii's Star Cup, this would have been my least favourite back then. But times have changed, and so have my opinions. Daisy Circuit is, as the name suggests, a circuit track, which I've already stated I like. So the whole setting being on a coast in the evening is really nice, and I do still carry a bit of nostalgia from Wii as well. I also really like how they still let you drive onto sidewalks as well, which is nice. So yeah, it's still a really nice track. Number 18. Wario's Gold Mine. Yet another incredibly iconic track from Mario Kart Wii. Wario's Gold Mine remains just as fun as back then. They changed the interior to be anti-gravity, which felt a little unnecessary, but it turned the minecart from obstacles to something you can get a boost from, and they still have the alternate path off to the side as well, which is cool. So definitely still a great track. Number 17. Ribbon Road. Another really iconic track from Super Circuit. Saying Ribbon Road got an overhaul would be an understatement. This is how you remake a Super Circuit track. They changed the setting to effectively make the track a toy set, which actually works really well for this track. The track itself is divided into 3 sections, each with a different colour scheme. The only part I'm not too keen on is the anti-gravity section, and that's mostly because of the wavy road. It can make it quite tricky to get either of the shortcuts here. But aside from that, this is still just a really fun track to race on, and I hope more Super Circuit courses get this kind of treatment. Number 16. Singapore Speedway. The next city course is Singapore Speedway, and this track looks really cool. Obviously it's a city themed track, so it's getting points there. But Singapore as a city just looks really nice, and this track replicates that quite well, showing a lot of the familiar buildings and architecture. And driving along the top of this building with the pool is pretty cool too. So overall, it's a really good track. Number 15. Berlin Byways. Yet another city track. So you can probably tell where this is going. It's a city themed track, which I like. I also like how it shows off several of the landmarks around Berlin, including a graffiti covered Berlin Wall, and adding Womps there was such a nice touch. I also like how you can drive through the train if you want, though I'm pretty sure it's faster to ignore it. So yeah, it's a pretty good track. Number 14. Toad Harbor. Toad Harbor is a track I'm sure a lot of people will enjoy. Taking inspiration from San Francisco, this track manages to stand out amongst other city themed tracks. I really like the boost ramps at the start on the boat, as well as the wall ride section here, and also the side path here that I'm sure everyone takes, although the following turn can be a bit hard on higher speeds. The inclusion of trams also adds to the feel of the city, so it's definitely a really nice track. Number 13. Sunshine Airport. I'm surprised it took this long to have a track based on an airport, though Sunshine Airport definitely delivers. I like how in the terminal where the race starts, you can actually see other courses in this game listed as flight destinations. I also like how you can drive along the wings of the plane here, and the gliding section towards the end is pretty cool as well. Almost makes you feel like a plane coming in for landing. And seeing several different planes take off also adds to the feel of this track. Definitely fun to race on. Number 12. London Loop. Time for another city track. This time, we're in jolly old England for London Loop. And can I just say, I applaud the developers for managing to restrain themselves from making it rain here. Like, it's still overcast, but at least it's not raining. But back to the track itself. Obviously being a city track, I enjoyed it already, and I think this track does a good job at showing off London. Though another thing I really like about this track is the music. Now I don't know how appropriate this is for London, but I enjoy it regardless. Definitely a track I enjoy. Number 11. Yoshi Circuit. I've already mentioned several times that I like the more basic circuit tracks, and this one's shaped like Yoshi. How could I not love it? While some of the turns can be tricky on higher speeds, it's not that big of a deal. I like how they added a little town at the feet where the starting line is, to flesh out the track a bit more. I also think the shortcut to the waterfall was pretty cool as well. So overall, a pretty fun track. And now, we have finally reached the top 10. Starting with Number 10. Vancouver Velocity. Time for the last of Tour's city tracks, and out of all of them, I consider Vancouver Velocity to be my favourite. Not only is it a city themed track, which I've mentioned numerous times I like, but it also incorporates some of the Canadian wilderness as well, which is cool. And I absolutely love the music for this course as well. Definitely one of my favourite tracks in this game. Number 9. Cooper City. Cooper City, also known as Neo Bowser City, which is admittedly a cooler name, was one of my favourite tracks on Mario Kart 7. Obviously, being a city themed track gets us some points, but the whole vibe with the rain and the neon signs makes it feel really unique. The hidden shortcut next to the starting line is pretty cool as well, so overall, it's a pretty great track. Number 8. Royal Raceway. Out of all the circuit tracks in this game, Royal Raceway stands atop the podium. Now obviously I like circuit tracks, but I think what makes Royal Raceway stand out is its length. It isn't particularly short, it's a pretty decent length, and I always enjoy racing here. Number 7. Waluigi Pinball. I'm sure most of you have been waiting for this track. It's Waluigi Pinball. How can you not love it? It's a track set in a pinball machine. Have you seen how creative some of those things can be? Obviously this track is cool as hell. The giant pinballs make for interesting obstacles as well. So yeah, great track. Number 6. Yoshi Valley. Let's be honest, people love Yoshi Valley for one main reason: the multiple alternate paths you can take. Each feels different in their own way. Now experienced players will obviously tell you that the bridge is the fastest route, but the other parts are still interesting. And fun fact, in the original on N64, the game itself couldn't even tell who was in first place when going through this section. In fact, I'm pretty sure that even in this version, the blue shell sometimes struggles to tell. So yeah, definitely a fun track. Number 5. N64 Rainbow Road. I knew going into this that this track was going to place very highly. I absolutely love this track, both visually and from a gameplay perspective. I like how there's a train that follows you throughout the track, throwing coins for you to pick up. But by far my favourite thing about this track is the music. It just sounds so good. Take a listen. It's hard to describe, but it gives us the impression that this is the big finale. And to be fair, it technically was, since this was the last track on the original Mario Kart 8 before the DLC got added. But for as much as I love this track, there is one problem. It's too short. In the original, it was actually considered to be too long. So when they remade it for 8, instead of the usual 3 laps, they made it 1 lap that's divided into 3 sections. Just like the 3DS version. But now it has the opposite problem. The movement in Mario Kart 8 is generally faster than Mario Kart 64, so the track doesn't feel as long now, and I genuinely prefer to race 3 laps of this, or at the very least 2. But aside from that, this is still an amazing track. Number 4. Mount Wario. Despite being a snow-themed track, I absolutely love Mount Wario. Instead of the usual circuit with 3 laps, this is a simple race from the top of the mountain to the bottom that's divided into 3 sections, and each segment feels unique, and yet they all blend together almost seamlessly. There's the anti-gravity section where you race along the side of a dam, the forest section with multiple paths, the skiing section, the ice caves, etc. And I have to mention the fact that you start the race by jumping out of a plane. That's just cool, and helps make this my favourite track of the original base 48 tracks. Now going into this, I actually expected Mount Wario to be either first or second, but the Booster Course Pass added 3 more tracks that managed to top it. Number 3. Moonview Highway. Moonview Highway might have honestly been my favourite track back in Mario Kart Wii, and the fact that it's a city-themed track was definitely a contributing factor. I also really like the idea of driving along a highway at night, and the traffic makes things interesting as well, especially the bomb cars that explode if you hit them. And I also really like the chain of boost panels in the city section as well. It really gives a nice sense of speed. So while I do love this track, it just barely, and I do mean barely, missed out on second place. Number 2. Wii Rainbow Road. Out of all the versions of Rainbow Road in this game, Mario Kart Wii's version is my favourite. And to be honest, this track can easily be described in one word: nostalgia. As I said earlier, I grew up on Mario Kart Wii and played it obsessively when I was younger, and I remember Rainbow Road very fondly. And playing it in this game, not a thing has changed. This track feels just as fun to race on now as it did back then, and the music is just incredible. Remember when I said that N64's Rainbow Road gave off a finale feeling? Well, Wii's Rainbow Road feels the exact same. And it's fitting too, since this is the last track in the Booster Course Pass, and thus the last track in the entire game. And I couldn't think of a better track to fill that spot. So for as much as I love this track, there's one track that I enjoy just a bit more. And if you've been keeping track, you might already know what course it is. Number 1. Ninja Hideaway. Out of all 96 tracks in this game, Ninja Hideaway is what I would consider my favourite. I absolutely love this track. The feudal Japanese look suits this track really well, and the multiple pathways make things interesting as well, although the gliding section feels a bit drawn out at times. Driving across the rooftops is cool, and being able to glide straight to the upper level is nice as well, and it's overall just a great track. But just like a few other tracks, my favourite part about this track is the music. Oh my god, the music for this track is so good. Just take a listen. This is probably my favourite music in the entire game, and it suits the track so well. So yeah, definitely an amazing track that I doubt will get topped anytime soon. And with that, we've finally ranked all 96 tracks on Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And oh boy, it's gonna be a while before I do another video this long. What did you guys think? What are some of your favourite tracks from this game? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. But that's going to do it from me here. Don't forget to like and subscribe, it really helps this channel out. Have a great day everyone, and I'll see you next time. See ya!